Hi everyone, I'm Annie Garratt, and in this masterclass, I'll be teaching on pastoring, building, and leading teams. I have spent pretty much my whole life in church. I am a pastor's kid, and so growing up, my dad was the pastor, my mom was the worship pastor, and my brother was the youth pastor. So it was like this big family affair. And so for me, church life and ministry is kind of all I have ever known. And although when I was a teenager, I actually hated being a PK, and I never in a million years would have thought that I would be a pastor myself. I think maybe the many years of conversations around our dinner table about life and people, discipleship, building church and serving must have shaped me more than I even was aware, because those same things then became my values and the things that I thought about and that I noticed and I cared about. And unbeknownst to me, I would later become a pastor and be married to a pastor. And those same things, those same conversations would then take place around my family's table. And so I'm passionate about people. I love seeing people find their place in the body of Christ, in his church. And I honestly believe that we are better together, and that it's more than just like a fun catchphrase that we say, but it's real. And that every person, they have something unique and something special and of worth that they bring to the table. And then together, through those different gifts and people's life experiences and stories, this is what makes the church so beautiful. We are one body and we are many parts, like it says in 1 Corinthians. And so for me, pastoring is rarely about standing on a platform preaching a message. That's probably 10% of what I do. But 90% of it, of pastoring, just comes down to leading and just the really normal stuff, working with volunteers, trying to grow and develop teams, solving problems, just serving church. And one of the ways that we practically pastor people is by leading them through our teams, which are obviously full of people. And so as leaders, our conversations and our decisions, our interactions, just in normal life, how we are leading, it really matters, because at the end of the day, it is all affecting the people that we lead. And so it's important that we lead our teams well, because these are the people that we have been entrusted with. And this doesn't mean that we get it right all the time. I certainly do not get it right all the time, but it does mean that people are at the forefront of our minds, and being Christ-like in our actions is always our goal in whatever we are doing. So I thought I would talk through a few keys that I've learned when building and leading teams. I'm still on the learning journey myself, and I think it never ends. But a few years ago, my husband and I had kind of you could call it a baptism by fire intro to building new teams. We were asked to take on a brand new role and become service pastors for one of our weekend services, which was a huge honor. And the first night that it was announced that we were going to be the new service pastors and we were taking on this existing team, the very first night, one of the team leaders within the same conversation came up to us, introduced herself, and said what she did on team, and she quit on the spot. And so within a few, which is obviously hugely encouraging when you're starting something, but through the next few weeks, just with different people transitioning and changes of seasons, we realized we were literally building from scratch. We were building the team from scratch. We were running a service that needed teams of volunteers just to function, and we had no leaders, and we had almost no volunteers. We had probably 3 people and us. And so we just got started, literally because we had no other choice. The service was going, and we just had to get moving too. And so we just started looking around and noticing that there were all these amazing people within our church who weren't involved anywhere, or maybe they used to do youth or leadership, but at some point stopped, and they weren't plugged in and they weren't serving. And so we just started asking, we started inviting, and we started sharing the vision and telling people what we are doing, saying, this is what we're doing, we're building this service, do you want to be a part of it? And what we found was that almost everybody just said yes, because people just wanted to be connected and they wanted to be a part of something. And with time, there came more clarity about the skills that were needed and what roles and responsibilities came along, what the teams needed to build. And as we got to know the people who had just said yes and their hearts, we started to see where people could fit, and people began to slowly find their place. And we just had to provide safe opportunities for people to engage in serving and succeed and enjoy it, which meant we started with wherever they were at. So sometimes it was standing on a door, just saying hi to people, or helping with new Christians, or showing someone where to sit in a service, or setting something up. And it did not happen overnight, but really slowly with time and a lot of hard work and just trying to be consistent, it just finally started to build. And this group of people that were just up for being involved started to find their feet and even become leaders and eventually go on to lead teams themselves. And there was a lot that I learned in that season of just having to start from scratch. And most of it was really simple. So I thought I would share a few keys that helped me. And the first key is just that first thing that we did, just invite people. In general, I think most people want to belong. They want to feel like they're a part of something. They want to feel connected. And they want to feel like they have something to contribute. And often people aren't involved simply because they weren't invited or they were never asked. It's actually that simple. And you're always going to find those groups of people that are just really outgoing and they're proactive and they will just sign themselves up for something and turn up and get amongst it. But I'm not that way. And I think the majority of people will probably wait to be asked. And sometimes people aren't even aware that they have something to give. And so it's our job as leaders to be looking for the golden people and to notice who we can include and just to invite them in and believe in them and help them get started. I mean, looking back, I would have loved to have taken on a team with just 20 incredible leaders and masses of volunteers ready to go. But I learned so much more having to start with what felt like nothing and just figure out how to build something out of it, because that is most of our realities. And I really learned just the power of the invitation. So that is the first key. The second key that I learned is that, and that we found just was really foundational, is every team needs a purpose. So you've got to establish and share the purpose for your team. What are you inviting people to be a part of? Is it clear to them? We talk here a lot about the why behind the what, and this is what we are doing, but more importantly, this is why we are doing it. This is why this matters. And you've got to put the vision in front of people and explain what your team is all about and then how they fit into that picture. So whether they are standing on a stage and they're playing guitar in a service or sitting in a back room, pressing buttons, making something happen, and no one necessarily sees them, or they're on a door or they're helping with catering, it doesn't matter what the actual act is, but what is their purpose and how does what they bring make a difference? So as leaders, we always want to be painting this picture for people and bringing the purpose and the value to what we're inviting people to be a part of. Because if they don't know why it's important, then they won't do it effectively. And we can't just assume that people know, because sometimes they don't. And the reality in church life is that there's just things that need to get done. Maybe you are having to make a church service happen, or you're rostering or building a team or helping with stuff in the community, whatever it is. I think there are two different approaches that you can take with people. We can either just point people to the task alone, or we can point them to the task and then we can point them to the purpose. And so if we're talking practically about what that looks like, one example was when my husband and I were the service pastors, we had a logistics team. Once the service was up and had been running for a while, it was more established. We had this team, and they would set up tables and chairs and these massive jumping castles every week before service. And it was really hard work. And I mean, the jumping castles were heavy and it was time consuming, and it was just, the team was a bunch of young single guys and they were setting up this family area every week. And it was just really hard, and it was just hard work, and we could see it. And so we had to remind them and tell the story of what the bigger picture was that they were a part of. So when they're setting up these tables and chairs and jumping castles, it was a lot more than that. It wasn't just setting something up and packing it down. They were helping to create this environment for families to come and find community and find relationship, to sit around tables and share meals together. And it gave people a reason to stay at church instead of rushing home after a service finished without engaging with anybody. And for some people, that might be the only opportunity they had to do that. I can think of single moms in our church. And so for them just to be able to sit and have a break around a table and just take a deep breath and let their kids be entertained and be on a jumping castle so they could have conversations or get prayer or connect with someone. And this area that they had set up was actually helping people, helping church become home for people. So it was huge what they were doing, but we as leaders had to help them see that bigger picture and that purpose. And if that team could only see the start and the end of their contribution is just setting up, packing down, then it didn't feel like there was a whole lot of value in what they were doing. So we had to tell the story and help them understand what that value was in their serving. So tell the story of your team. What is it all about? And help the people that you're leading understand the why, because the why is what is going to keep you going.